Welcome back. We're still working on the jewelry box build, but you can see we have varnish on the boxes. The ones in the back without varnish will be stained, and I'll be doing those later. We have the trays and the escutcheons. I'll do a close-up of the escutcheons in just a minute. All the parts for the dividers. The roll in the back of fabric is the velvet that I'll be cutting for the bottom liners of the box and the tray. I want to slip the camera out just for a second. These are the escutcheons. They turned out really well. A little bit of jewelry for the jewelry box. And then I'm going to pan over past all the parts for the dividers. I have the bottom dividers and the thinner upper dividers. These are the dividers that have the ribbon handles. I'll show that installation. This is the fabric, the velvet. This is a template that I use for getting the dimensions right. I cut it with these Fiskars roller cutters, and I'll do that in just a minute. But first I want to pan over to this side to show all the parts of the hardware. The bushings that go in the box, the bushings that go into the lid, the washers, the pins, the locks, the screws, and then last the keys. So you can see that there's a lot of pieces that go into a jewelry box. I'm going to set up the camera again and show how I cut the velvet. Here's the tray. Parts. I have the velvet roll. I set the template here. The corner, sometimes if you use the roller you go too far, so I do the last little bit. Scissors. The velvet goes. So when I'm assembling the trays, I have the velvet already pre-cut with a little bit of spray adhesive. I put it into the bottom of the tray. Then I have the dividers pre-assembled except for the perimeter pieces. And then if I can do this, we get the dividers into the tray, the long perimeter ones installed. Then I put just a couple dots of glue on these, the dividers with the handles on the ends, and then I clamp these in place, and they hold all the others in position. So the short dividers go under the long dividers, and then the end dividers hold everything down like a clamp. Just a little bit of glue right by the ribbon handles so that if you have to, or if I have to change anything, take it apart, if there's a spill, then I can just heat up a plumbing torch, pop the glue, and everything comes out. While this sits in the clamps, I'd like to show how I cut the bushings for the hinge pins for the lid and the box. We'll go over into the shop now and do that. This is a vise I use with some soft jaws to hold the tubing that makes up the bushings. This is a very small tubing cutter. I'll put it down. That is really good. It has a typical pipe cutting wheel cutter in the center, and then just Delrin moving jaws to cut the tubing. So you just make a mark with a pencil on where you need the tubing cut. Snug it down. And that's how you cut a tube. And that way you use a countersink bit in a cordless drill to take off the burr on the ends, and the small 1/8 inch diameter brass rod acts as the hinge pin inside the bushings. The only other thing to show right now is how to do the polishing of the varnish. So we'll go back into the showroom and I'll get set up and show you how to polish a lid. The polishing is very straightforward. I get 3 coats of varnish built up on the part, either the lid or the box or the tray. Then I start with 400 grit sandpaper. I wipe it off with a rag. I go to 600 grit. Then I wipe it down with steel wool. And then I add a coat of Minwax antique oil finish. I put that in a little tuna tin. I rub it on, and then I buff it with clean rags. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to show how that all gets done. I start on the inside areas. So I'll sand this area, then I'll do the perimeter of the panel, the profile. Then I'll do these pieces over running the seam a little bit, and then I'll clean that cross-grain scratches up by going in this direction. And it's just the felt block that I've used before, 400 grit sandpaper. It's easy to get a good result in the center section. It's hard to get a good result in this section, so that's where I tend to focus. In the beginning, working towards the ends. It goes through a lot of sandpaper doing this. Then I save some of the used sandpaper, roll it up to get into the profiles. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good for 400 grit. What result is important, if it's possible to show this, is that it's an even dull finish. We're using high gloss varnish, so any little bit of shine, there's some right here, needs to be sanded away. And it usually happens where the sanding block stops, because those areas aren't getting enough of the sanding particles dragged over them to cause the dull finish. And that's pretty much sanding in a nutshell to do that. I'll go real quick with the 600 grit. The important thing to keep in mind is this is called finishing the finish. Bob Flexner's book talks about it, and it's what a high quality finish looks like, rather than just using a semi-gloss varnish or lacquer and leaving the last coat unprocessed. Then the last step is just with the steel wool to even up the scratches and get a finer texture to the varnish. And where the cross-grained scratches are, to work that area maybe a little bit more. And I brush the dust off. Wipe it down with a dry rag. I can show that the dull surface. And then in the corners there, it's hard to get in with the rag, so I go in with a artist brush. And then I have one rag in each hand. These are just white cotton rags. And that's pretty much it for polishing. It doesn't take much time, but it really is a big attraction for when it comes time to sell, especially at a craft show where people can see it in person. It makes a big impression. And it's a beautiful lid. And you can see the shine on it. Very soft, glowing shine. And that's it. Thank you.